Despite several red flags, a past conviction for child abuse, circumstantial evidence, and a receipt linked to a missing teen, police still lacked solid grounds to arrest John Wayne Gacy. A search of his house turned up nothing concrete, so they placed him under surveillance. And then he slipped. One night, officers saw him hand a package of marijuana to a gas station clerk. It wasn't much, but it was enough to detain him. In custody, Gacy began to crack. He reportedly confessed to killing maybe 30 people and even marked a spot in his crawl space with spray paint. But he wasn't telling the whole truth. What they found wasn't the missing teen, and it wasn't just one body. It was the start of a nightmare. Welcome back to Prison Stories. In this video, we uncover how John Wayne Gacy, one of the most twisted serial killers in American history, was finally convicted and executed. Gacy changed his story many times and never pleaded guilty. This is how his trial unfolded, and how it all led to his execution. After John Wayne Gacy was arrested in December 1978, the world watched in growing horror as a quiet suburban home transformed into the scene of one of the most grotesque crime stories in American history. What began as a missing person case soon unraveled into a nightmare buried beneath the floorboards, literally. December 23, 1978. As police began excavating the crawl space, they uncovered human remains. They had been hoping to find the body of Robert Piest, the teen whose disappearance triggered the investigation. But what they found were two bodies, neither of which matched Piest. The remains were too old. It was the opening of a Pandora's box. By December 26, 1978, within just 3 days, authorities had uncovered 11 bodies, all in various stages of decomposition. Gacy began cooperating, pointing out locations of other corpses. Each body brought fresh grief and more questions. Who were these boys? How long had they been buried there? As word spread, Gacy's home became a media circus. Cameras lined the street. Reporters from across the U.S., even London, descended on the scene. Neighbors, parents of missing boys, and curious onlookers stood outside, watching in disbelief. Forensic anthropologists and dentists were called in to identify the remains. The process was grueling and slow. By December 29th, just 6 days after the first discovery, the body count had reached 27, most of them found beneath the house. Only one victim had been positively identified at that time. In response to the panic, a national toll-free hotline was launched for teenage runaways to call home. Some parents didn't even come forward, fearing the stigma of their sons being connected to a scandal involving homosexuality. On January 3, 1979, Gacy sat down with investigators one final time. Calm and calculated, he assured them, "You have all the bodies." He confessed that all victims had been killed inside his home, and that when the crawl space filled up, he started dumping bodies into the Des Plaines River. So far, 27 victims have been recovered from his home, and 2 more from the river, but Robert Piest remained missing. His jacket, however, was recovered from Gacy's house. On January 8, 1979, Gacy was charged officially for the killing of 7 men. Later, that indictment will be changed to 33 young men. The charges included murder, sexual assault, indecent liberties with child, and kidnapping. Despite the overwhelming evidence and his own recorded statements, Gacy changed the story. He claimed police had coerced him into confessing and entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Jury selection began in Cook County. The stage was set for one of the most high-profile trials in American legal history. By the time the trial began, Gacy was broke, unable to pay for his own defense. Cook County stepped in to fund it, appointing attorney Sam Amarant and Robert Mata using taxpayer money. To raise funds, officials scheduled an auction of Gacy's personal belongings, but the sale was postponed after public backlash. It was scheduled for Father's Day. The idea of selling a serial killer's possessions on such a symbolic day angered the public. With no proceeds and no other option, the county bore the cost of defending one of America's most infamous criminals. The trial began on 6th of February 1980. The courtroom became a theater of horrors. The judge issued strict guidelines about who could attend the proceedings due to the disturbing content. The evidence was overwhelming. Physical evidence, chilling witness testimony, items belonging to victims found in his house and crawl space. Victims' families sat in quiet agony as the details emerged. The community-minded man, who once dressed as a clown, had now become the stuff of nightmares. Gacy's defense team attempted to portray him as legally insane, arguing that no sane person could commit such horrific acts. They presented evidence of his multiple personalities and erratic behavior, hoping to sway the jury toward a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. However, the prosecution countered with overwhelming evidence of premeditation and organization in the killings, painting Gacy as a cold, calculating predator who knew exactly what he was doing. The trial didn't last long. On March 13th, after just a few hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict: guilty on all 33 counts of murder. Gacy was also convicted of sexual assault and taking indecent liberties with a child. Justice, at long last, had begun to take form. One day after the verdict, Gacy was sentenced to death. His execution was initially scheduled for June 2nd, 1980, but was stayed due to automatic appeals. Over the next 14 years, Gacy's legal team launched multiple rounds of appeals, first in the Illinois state courts, then in the U.S. federal system, and finally to the U.S. Supreme Court. They challenged nearly every aspect of his conviction, from the validity of search warrants to the adequacy of jury instructions, and even alleged ineffective assistance from his defense attorneys. However, all of these appeals were denied. After being sentenced to death, John Wayne Gacy was scheduled to be executed on May 10, 1994, at the Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. In the days leading up to the date, with no further delays or stays, the stage was set for final justice. The night before his execution, Gacy ordered a last meal that reflected his past: a bucket of KFC chicken, 12 fried shrimp, French fries, a pound of strawberries, and a Diet Coke, foods linked to his former career managing KFC restaurants. Despite facing death, Gacy remained arrogant and unrepentant until the very end. He refused to express remorse or offer any apology, demonstrating the same chilling detachment that defined his crimes. In his final moments, he defiantly addressed a prison official with the words, "Kiss my ass." At precisely 12:58 a.m., the lethal injection began. Gacy was administered 3 drugs, one to knock him unconscious, a second to stop his breathing, and a third to halt his heart. But a clog in the 4-line disrupted the process, delaying the delivery of the second chemical and prolonging his death by approximately 18 minutes, far longer than expected. Despite the delay, prison staff eventually cleared the line and completed the execution. At 12:58 a.m., he was pronounced dead by official count. Gacy may have died by lethal injection, but his case is still far from resolved. Over the years, authorities painstakingly identified most of his victims using traditional forensic methods. Initially, identifications relied on dental records and X-rays. However, by Gacy's execution in 1994, only about 25 of the 33 victims had known identities. 2011, advanced DNA technology led to the identification of some of his victims. The most recent breakthrough came in October 2021, when Francis Wayne Alexander, victim number 5, was identified using genetic genealogy via the DNA Doe Project. As of today, 5 victims remain unidentified, known only by their body numbers and buried under markers reading, "Known only to God." The Gacy investigation shattered America's sense of suburban safety. His crimes forced police departments nationwide to reevaluate how they handle missing persons, particularly teenage runaways. Justice finally caught up with John Wayne Gacy, but the pain he left behind will never be buried. Thank you for watching Prison Stories. If you found the video interesting, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to watch our next videos. Until then, stay safe.